I met my girlfriend at a funeral and fell in love. I overheard her on the phone saying that she only started dating me because her friends dared her to date someone so stupid and ugly. I never thought I'd have to use this old account, but I'm stuck and need some advice before I possibly ruin what has been a good 8-month relationship so far. I'm probably going to paraphrase or write something similar to what happened because I've spent the entire day trying to remember exactly what happened and what was said and done from this point on. For a little background, my GF, 24, and I were first introduced at a funeral of all places, Uncle's passing. They were extremely close, having spent every summer together fishing at his cabin in Maine. Marcus practically begged me to come with him for moral support, and I couldn't say no to a friend in need. The funeral was held at one of those old churches, all stained glass and polished wood. The day was gloomy. I stood by Marcus during the service, offering a shoulder when he needed it, but during the reception afterward, he was surrounded by family members sharing memories, and I stepped back to give them space. In any case, I wasn't particularly sad. Looking at the reception, I was speaking with one of Marcus's family friends in the corner of the hall, an older gentleman who had known the uncle for decades and was sharing some surprisingly funny stories about their youth. I found myself smiling, which my soon-to-be girlfriend saw from the other side of the room. She had a glass of something amber in color, which I'm fairly certain wasn't just apple juice because the reception had an open bar. Her hair was pulled back in a tasteful updo, and she was wearing a simple black dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and appropriate for a funeral. She then made a rather morbid joke, asking if I put him in the casket. "You're smiling a bit too much for a funeral," she said with a raised eyebrow. "Planning your next victim, or did you already accomplish your mission with the person in the box?" It was so direct that I just kind of snorted. I laughed and almost choked on my drink. The elderly man I was speaking to excused himself with a knowing smile, and then it was just the two of us. Started talking all afternoon, discovering that we were in that weird bubble that occasionally arises at somber gatherings where you meet someone unexpectedly. I found out that her name was Ellie and that she was the deceased neighbor's daughter, practically family by extension. She had grown up calling him Uncle Joe, although we had no blood ties. I told her about my friendship with Marcus, and somehow the conversation moved on to our jobs, our mutual love of obscure indie films, and our dislike of olives on pizza. By the end of the wake, I had her number on my phone, and I had the odd feeling that something important had just occurred in my life. As I drove home that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about her meeting someone at a funeral, as if it were the beginning of a horrible rom-com or a horror film. I was nervous that she would find it too casual, but she seemed genuinely excited about it. We sat at the counter watching the chef work his magic and talked for hours about everything and nothing. She had this way of making me feel like the most interesting person in the world, asking thoughtful questions and listening to my answers. After dinner, we walked downtown, stopping for ice cream despite the chilly weather. She was funny, witty, pretty, and a genuinely fun girl to be around, so of course I took a chance and asked her out 3 days later, and she accepted rather eagerly. Who didn't take themselves too seriously. The date ended with a startlingly passionate kiss on my card that made me dizzy and made me plan our second date before it was even driven away. That weekend, we went hiking at a nearby state park, and I was impressed by her enthusiasm for scaling rocks and wading through streams to find the ideal view. By our third date, a cooking class, she introduced me to her apartment, and I introduced her to my friends, who instantly fell in love with her charm and quick wit. Eventually, we began spending more nights together than apart, and at the 6-month mark, when my lease was up, it seemed reasonable to suggest we move in together, rent a small backyard where I could grill, and she could start the vegetable garden she'd always wanted. It wasn't much, but it felt like hours, and I loved coming home to her every day. I hadn't met many of her friends yet, which I found a little strange because she had introduced me to her parents early on, but she always seemed to have an excuse for why I couldn't meet her friend group. She was busy, events were canceled, or someone was going through a difficult time. I didn't push it, thinking she would bring me around when she was ready. Looking back, I should have recognized that as a warning sign, but I was too enamored to question it, believing that we were creating something genuine and lasting. I had even begun casually perusing jewelry stores, considering what kind of ring might fit her hands. I arrived home a little earlier from work. I was covering a shift last night, and the person I was covering came in anyway, so they didn't need me for 8 hours. My boss, Jeremy, practically pushed me out the door, telling me to go surprise my girlfriend and maybe pick up some flowers on the way. I thought that was a great idea because we haven't had much time together lately due to our long work days, so I stopped by this little florist shop near our house and picked up a bouquet of sunflowers. The owner even added some baby's breath and wrapped it with a ribbon when I told her they were for a surprise. I felt pretty good about myself, picturing Ellie's smile when I arrived home earlier than expected, and the front door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual because Ellie occasionally forgot to lock it when she was home alone. I heard her laughing from the kitchen, that full-bodied laugh that initially drew me to her. I thought she was cooking as usual, watching something funny on her laptop, and I was going to sneak up and give her a surprise hug from behind. But as I got closer, I realized she was on the phone with someone. I was about to give her a little jump scare when she said, "I never meant for this whole thing with BF to last so long. I'd never normally date someone like him." I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding in my ears, and then she went on, "I know, right, but he's actually really sweet, and the sex isn't bad either." Another pause, followed by more laughter. "Oh God, Tina, stop. I'm not that desperate, but you and Stacy were so for forcing me to do this for 8 months. It's unbelievable how long it's been that long." My hand must have slipped against the wall, or perhaps I made an unintelligible sound of distress. She caught me right after I admitted that I made a noise that I couldn't even begin to explain, and she heard me. Her head whipped around the phone, which was still pressed to her ear, and her eyes widened in horror when she saw me standing there. I'd never seen someone go that pale before, and the blood drained from her face, leaving her looking ashen and sick. "I'll call you back," she whispered into the phone, then let it fall to the counter with a clatter. "How long have you been standing there, Ellie?" she asked. I asked, "How long have you been standing there?" She tried to approach me, but I abruptly stepped back, saying, "I'm not what you think. It sounded like you've been dating me as a joke, so I said, I'm just some charity case to you and your friends GF. She then spent the next hour or so admitting that she had never planned to date me, but that after her friends discovered that she had given me her number, they found a picture of me online and thought I was so hilariously unattractive that GF had to pretend to date me for a week to give me hope. She sat on our couch, tears streaming down her face, telling me everything about how her friends Tina and Stacy had always been the pretty, popular girls since high school and how she would always follow the lead about how they had looked me up on Facebook after she talked about meeting someone interesting at a funeral and how they had laughed so hard at my profile picture. Tina said, "Really, that person with the receding hairline and the dad bod," in a small, ashamed voice, and I said, "You should go out with him just once. Give the poor guy some hope before you crush his dreams." I wished I was kidding, but it seems like her friends in GF are still in their mean girl high school phase. These women were in their mid-20s, had careers, and were still playing cruel games with people's emotions like they were 16 and controlling the school hallways. She told me last week that she was foolish for agreeing with it, that I was an excellent guy, and that she truly loved me, but she never expected to feel that way about me after our first date. I was about to end it as I had promised them, but she admitted to twisting her hands in her lap. So I thought maybe one more date wouldn't hurt. Then one more turned into another, and then I realized I was falling for you because I'm not her typical type of guy. When I asked her to elaborate, she mumbled that she didn't initially find me attractive at all, but after a few weeks of dating, she stopped caring about my appearance. Better, you know, the gym rat type with flawless hair and teeth, but they were all such. In the end, you're different, you're kind and considerate, and you listen when I talk. I admit that I lost my temper here and called her an immature waste of my time because, to find all this, out 8 months, and when I cared about her, she was foul. How am I supposed to trust anything you say? Now I yelled, pacing back and forth across our living room. Was it any of it, or am I just the safe, dull option you settled for because your hot exes treated you like garbage? She flinched at my words, and she flinched at my words. More tears were streaming down her cheeks. It was real, and she insisted on getting up to try and reach for me. "I love you. I love our life together. Please, to believe me." But at that moment, all I saw was her laughing with her friends at my expense, calling me some kind of charity case. It suddenly made perfect sense that she had been embarrassed by me all along, so I told her, "I need to get out of here." She followed me, begging and crying, but I ignored her, throwing some clothes into a duffel bag, grabbing my laptop and phone charger, and heading for the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Does it matter?" I shot back, but then I sighed. I need space to think. As I opened the front door and saw the bouquet of sunflowers, I thought I was staying with my mom right now because I needed time to think and vent. She's always been my rock and the person I turn to when things go wrong. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "Oh, honey," before pulling me into an embrace. I didn't realize how much I needed that until I found myself fighting back tears in her arms. She didn't press for details right away. Instead, she put me up in my old bedroom, brought me a sandwich and some tea, and sat with me while I picked at the food. Eventually, I told her everything, and she listened without interrupting, her expression growing more horrified as the story progressed. "What should I do, Mom?" I asked when I'd finished feeling. I turned off my phone shortly after arriving at Mom's because I couldn't handle the thought of seeing messages or calls from Ellie until I had time to process everything. Mom respected my need for space. checking in occasionally, but mostly leaving me to my thoughts. Tonight, I sat out on my mom's back porch, staring at the stars and trying to make sense of everything. She sighed deeply, even though she was 27 years old. Only you can decide that, sweetheart, but ask yourself this: even if she does love you now, can you ever trust her again? Do you want to be with someone who would ever treat another person like that? I didn't expect this much feedback, so I turned my phone back on, and it's a mess of texts, voicemails, and missed calls. I've only listened to a couple, but she's crying her heart out and pleading for me to come home so she can explain nothing from her friends' minds. I don't know what to do, but now I feel like garbage. 2 days later, first of all, thank you to everyone who commented on the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre. Your perspectives have given me a lot to think about, and I appreciate the time you all took to offer support and advice. On to the update. After making the original post, I finally turned my phone back on and was inundated with voicemails, texts, and other messages. I only listened to a handful of them, and my girlfriend was crying uncontrollably over them all, pleading with me to come home and listen to her explain. One voicemail in particular stuck with me through my tears, saying, "I know I don't deserve another chance, but please just let me talk to you one more time. I can't lose the best thing that's ever happened to me because I was too stupid and insecure to stand up to my friends. It's a house share, and I pay rent to live there. The lease has both of our names on it, and I couldn't exactly afford to just walk away from that financial commitment. In addition, my mother was essentially nudging me back out to let GF explain herself. You don't have to forgive her," she told me as I packed up my belongings. She said softly, "Sometimes people do terrible things for reasons that seem incomprehensible to them at the time, even if those reasons seem incomprehensible to everyone else. To stay with her, but I brought you up to at least listen to people, especially those you used to care about, so I went home the following day and practiced my words in the car. All of those plans were thrown out the window the moment I walked through the door." She practically threw herself at me, her hair in a mess, her eyes red and swollen from crying, and she was wearing one of my old university sweatshirts, which she frequently wore when she was feeling especially vulnerable or missing me. I worked late, and she was crying and trying to speak, but was crying too much between words to sound coherent. "I'm so sorry" was all I could see. She was crying so much that she was having trouble breathing at times. Despite everything, I led her to the couch, got her a glass of water, and waited for her to calm down enough to talk. After 8 months, it wasn't like that. She insisted that I wasn't laughing at her. I swear, I was laughing at how foolish I was forever listening to them in the first place. I raised an eyebrow skeptically, but that's not what it sounded like from her. She took a deep breath where I was standing. "I know I understand how it must have seemed, but allow me to explain everything from the beginning. To keep this update from taking up too much time, she used these fake names for her friends. I'm probably paraphrasing, but I've spent about 40 minutes trying to remember exactly what she said. GF, I didn't mean to ask you out on a dare. I wanted to date you before they even knew about you, so I gave you my number first. Recall that when Stacy and Tina discovered I had given you my number, they looked you up on Facebook and thought it was hilarious that you were even trying with me. They then got this stupid dare thing and told me to do it to give all the uglies in the world. I owe them a lot," she said, looking down at her hands. They were the popular, pretty girls who had mysteriously taken her under their wing when she was the awkward new kid with braces and hand-me-down clothes. I thought I did, but they've always been mean, and I never imagined they'd be mean to someone I cared about. Wow, you're mature. Do you remember what you said on the phone to whoever it was right that you never meant for us to last this long? You told me I wasn't your type. What's your type? GF? Not me? Too ugly for you? I couldn't control my resentment. All of it came rushing to the surface. GF, stop pretending that you're not ugly. You're just not the kind of guy I'd have chosen to date for a long time. Look at us. We've been together for almost 9 months. I love you so much, and I can prove it to you. She reached for my hands, but I pulled them away, and her face fell. But she went on, saying, I always went for guys who treated me like garbage, but looked good on Instagram. She acknowledged that Tina and Stacy approved of guys who made me feel like I had to be perfect all the time when they would leave. You're the first person who ever made me feel like I could just be myself. I don't know. I love you too. But all I can think about is you laughing about me behind my back to them. How can I trust you? I don't know how to deal with Tina in any other way. She's always been like this, and I just go along with it to keep the peace. She explained that Tina, in particular, had a way of turning on people who disagreed with her, and that she'd seen friendships and relationships destroyed when someone fell out of favor with her. It's not an excuse, she said quickly, seeing my expression. I know it's not. I should have stood up to her ages ago. I should have told her to go to hell the moment she said those things about you, but I was a coward, so you'd rather keep the peace than stand up for me. Twisting my words? Babe, I'm not God, so why should I stay with you, GF? Give me a reason why you laughed behind my back. You dated me on a dare Tina and Stacy gave you, So you're still friends with them, and you chose them and their cruelty over us and what we have, GF. We've been friends for years, but I gave up at this point. It was just a back and forth between me trying to leave and her declaring her love and defending her friendship. With the Wonder Twins, she followed me from room to room, alternating between sobbing apologies and attempts to explain why she couldn't just cut these toxic people out of her life. You have no idea what she's saying. Moment in my life, aside from the last 8 months when I pointed out that, you've spent those months building a life with me. That seemed to hit her heart. She stopped in her tracks, her expression changing as if, for the first time, she was seeing things. You're right, she said quietly. They haven't been there. They didn't help us move in. They didn't bring soup when I had the flu last month. They don't even know about how you surprised me with coffee in bed on Sundays or how we have that ridiculous dance competition while we're preparing dinner. For a moment, I thought maybe she was finally understanding, but then she went back to making excuses for their behavior, and that flicker died. I'm not back home, guys. She's constantly trying to have another conversation. I'm exhausted. I don't know what to do. 2 parts of me want to believe that she truly fell in love with me despite her initial shallow judgment that what we built over these 8 months was real and meaningful. But another part of me is unsure if I can ever fully trust her again, or if I'll always be wondering if she's secretly embarrassed to be with me. I'm not sure what to say because every time I look at her, I see both the woman I fell in love with and the woman who allowed her friends to make fun of me for sport. I see her sincere regret, but I also see her inability to cut off all ties with people who bring out the worst in her, strongly inclined to simply pack it in.